Snow fell in heavy silence, soft as ashes spilling from a broken sky, each flake clinging to the roof of the small frontier station. Lanterns swung in the wind, their light yellowed and tired, catching on the rails that stretched away into the dark like thin scars on the land. On a bench pushed against the wall, a woman sat wrapped in the tattered remnants of a wedding dress. The veil hung loose, the lace frayed, her silver-white hair spilling freely beneath it. She did not cry. Her tears had dried before she reached this place. Only her lips moved in the hush, carrying words the night seemed to swallow whole. "Just kill me fast." She had not meant to speak them aloud. They were not for strangers, not even for God. They were the plain truth of her heart after being cast aside like an unwanted bundle of rags. Only yesterday she had stood in a crowded house with a ring half placed on her hand, the groom's kin declaring her too old, too barren, unfit to carry their name. Their eyes had been sharp as knives, their whispers louder than gunfire. In that moment, Eleanor Mayfield felt herself stripped not only of a wedding but of worth itself. And now she sat here, neither bride nor wife, abandoned between destinations, her shame tied tighter than any corset. The wind hissed through the cracked boards of the station, stinging her face. She pulled her arms close, but the cold still gnawed at her. She had thought perhaps the train would offer escape, but the last departure had gone. She remained marooned on this bench, a figure draped in frost and memory, while the world rolled on without her. The sound of wagon wheels on gravel pulled her head up, though she had no reason to meet any man's eyes again. A lone cowboy stepped down from the back of a freight wagon, boots striking the ground with the rhythm of long miles. He carried nothing but a saddlebag and a rolled wool blanket slung across his shoulder. His coat was dusted with snow, his face shadowed beneath the brim of a hat worn soft by weather. Jack Callahan moved with the kind of steady patience that comes from a life on the trail, where nothing good ever came of rushing. His eyes swept the station yard and paused on her, not for the strangeness of a woman in a wedding gown at night, not for the silver hair that glowed like moonlight, but for the stillness that clung to her body, stillness that spoke of someone already half departed from life. He did not speak, not at first. He crossed the platform, boots ringing faintly, and sat a space away from her on the same bench. His silence was not cruel or curious, simply companionable, as though sitting near her was reason enough. She kept her gaze on the ground, fearing mockery, but none came. When the wind surged again and made her shudder, he moved. Without a word, he unrolled the blanket and set it around her shoulders. The wool was rough, smelling faintly of smoke and horse, but it was warm. It startled her more than if he had raised a pistol. She drew a breath and found her voice brittle. "I'm no use to anyone." The words cracked in the air, too sharp to take back. Jack's answer was quiet, almost like he was speaking to himself. "I reckon warmth don't ask for use." Then he leaned back, folding his hands, and said no more. Somewhere behind them, a pair of townsmen chuckled, the sound scraping her nerves raw. She knew their kind, gossips who would carry word of the rejected bride still wearing white, now pitied by some wanderer. Their laughter pricked at her shame like burrs in cloth. She felt her face burn and bowed her head, wishing she could disappear. Yet the blanket's weight held her still, its warmth more stubborn than the cold spite of strangers. She realized with a start that he was not mocking her, not measuring her against youth or beauty, but simply keeping her from freezing. The station-master stepped out to douse the lanterns, announcing in a brisk voice that the last train had gone and would not return till morning. One by one, the few stragglers drifted away, leaving only the echo of boots on wood. Eleanor sat frozen in thought. Nowhere to go, no house to return to, no family willing to claim her. She imagined herself staying here through the night until frost carried her into silence, a pale bride of winter. Perhaps that was the mercy she had whispered for. The cowboy rose, stretching the stiffness from his shoulders. He gathered his saddlebag, then turned toward her. His voice was low, steady, the kind that did not ask but invited. "You coming?" His hand, weathered and strong, hung loosely at his side, not forcing, not commanding, simply waiting. She looked at it for a long time. She could remain seated on the bench until death took her, or she could stand, though she did not yet know where those steps would lead. Slowly, almost unwillingly, she placed her hands beneath the blanket and pushed herself to her feet. The act felt heavier than the veil she had worn, heavier than the stairs that followed her in daylight. Yet when she rose, she found the air a little easier to breathe. The cowboy gave a small nod, no smile, no triumph, only quiet acknowledgment. Together they walked across the platform into the drifting snow, leaving the empty station behind. The night was not yet kinder, and the whispers of the town still lingered in her ears, but something had shifted. For the first time since she had spoken those fatal words into the cold, Eleanor felt the faintest spark that death had not claimed her yet. Somewhere beyond the station, another chapter waited, and though she could not imagine its shape, she was moving toward it. And that movement, fragile as it was, kept the dark from closing in. The inn smelled of wood smoke and stew, its windows fogged against the storm that pressed on the town. Eleanor hesitated at the threshold, the blanket still drawn around her shoulders, as if stepping inside meant stepping beneath Judgment's lantern. Jack walked first, his boots steady on the planks, and pulled out a chair at the nearest table without a word. The room had already hushed when they entered, every gaze fastening to the silver-haired woman in a ruined wedding dress. Eleanor could almost hear their thoughts. The rejected bride, pitted by a drifter, paraded before them in disgrace. Her breath came shallow, her fingers twitching toward the door. But Jack placed a hand on the back of the chair, waiting. His quiet steadiness held her where shame nearly broke her. She sat, the wooden seat creaking beneath her, and kept her eyes low. Across the room, two ranch hands laughed under their breath. "Picked himself a ghost," one muttered, just loud enough to sting. The words curled like smoke through the air, bitter and lingering. Jack did not bristle, nor did he turn to answer them. Instead, he lifted two fingers toward the innkeeper and ordered stew and bread in a voice calm as a river stone. When the bowls arrived, he slid one before Eleanor with care, as though the meal were a gift worth ceremony. She had not eaten since morning, when grief turned her stomach to stone. Now the steam rose, fragrant and plain, and though her hand trembled, she lifted the spoon. Each bite carried warmth deeper than she expected, settling in the hollow place inside her chest. She realized she was being taught something. Dignity was not loud, nor did it demand defense. It simply endured, one small act at a time. Later, when they climbed the narrow stairs to the room above, the fire was already lit. Jack set his saddlebag in the corner and bent to stir the flames, coaxing them to life. The glow caught his face, weathered by sun and distance, yet softened now by stillness. Eleanor removed the veil and laid it across the chair, not gently but with finality, as if discarding the last token of her humiliation. The gesture left her feeling both naked and free. Jack did not remark upon it, only straightened the blanket around her shoulders again, as though ceremony were not needed between them. Words did not follow. Silence filled the room like a shared breath. She studied the lines of his profile, the calm set of his jaw, the way his eyes did not shy from her white hair but seemed to see in it something luminous rather than lost. For the first time in many years, she felt watched without being measured. Morning arrived hushed, snow settling like lace upon the roofs outside. Eleanor woke to the steady crackle of embers in the hearth, the blanket still wrapped around her, the warmth of survival undeniable. Jack was downstairs already, saddling his horse in the yard. When she stepped outside, the townsfolk were gathered as if drawn by some unseen summons, their eyes cutting sharper than knives. She stiffened, her pulse thundering. They remembered yesterday's bride, the woman spurned and laughed at. And now here she was, climbing onto the horse of a stranger. The weight of their gaze threatened to crush her, to turn her back into the woman who whispered for death at the station. From across the street, the groom's kin stood like judges. One called out, voice thick with disdain, "Think you're wanted now? You're nothing but pity's shadow." The words cracked in the cold, louder than the wind. Eleanor's throat closed. Her body trembled with the old reflex to bow, to vanish, to let their scorn define her once more. But Jack moved before she could falter. He placed his hat gently onto her head, its brim shielding her from the crowd, and then spoke in a voice that carried not anger but finality. "She rides with me. Nothing more. No threat, no plea. Just the certainty of a man who had already chosen." The silence that followed was heavier than any jeer. No one answered him. The ranch hands looked away. Even the groom's kin shifted back, muttering but cowed. In that quiet, Eleanor felt the shame that had bound her for so long slip, like snow falling from a branch under sunlight. She sat straighter on the horse, her spine finding its own strength. The silver of her hair gleamed beneath his hat, no longer a mark of loss but of survival. She understood, with startling clarity, that she was not rescued. She was seen. As Jack led the horse forward and the town faded behind, Eleanor breathed deeply, and the air filled her as if it belonged to her again. The road stretched ahead, uncertain yet open, and she realized she had taken the first steps into a life no longer dictated by scorn. What awaited her she could not yet know, but the day had indeed changed all. She carried warmth now, and with it the fragile but undeniable spark of hope.